Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Deputy Mayor Mike Agpata, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. All the members of council are here. Mayor Meloche is out of the country, and Councillor Desjardins is unavailable. Before we begin, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is traditional territory of the Caldwell First Nations of Three Fires Confederacy and the original peoples of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We'd also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nations communities and all original peoples across Turtle Island. Moving to the agenda, looking to my council colleagues, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing none, if one should come to your attention as we progress through the meeting, just please let us know. We are here for a planning meeting. The Planning and Development Department of the Town of LaSalle is in receipt of an application for an official plan amendment submitted by BT's Sunset Marina, seeking to amend Schedule B in the LaSalle official plan by removing the provincially significant wetland designation and replacing it with residential district designation for the property located at 2362 Front Road. The Planning and Development Department of the Town of LaSalle is in receipt of an application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by 10008222057 Ontario Incorporated regarding a rezoning which affects approximately 2 acres of land located on the south side of Morton Industrial Parkway, north of Highway 18. Also, the proposed amendment will add a recreational facility and an associated restaurant as permitted uses to the business park zone. Pursuant to the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Section P, page 13, a notice of public planning meeting dated October 21st, 2024 was placed in the local subscribed newspaper at least 20 days prior to the meeting date, a copy of which is attached here too. Reports PD 39-2024 dated October 18th, 2024 and PD 40-2024 dated October 18th, 2024 and contained herein have been prepared to provide the public with the pertinent information as to the specifics of the application during the statutory planning meeting. So we're at the public meeting to consider an official plan amendment OPA 012024 for 2362 Front Road and the southern adjacent vacant lands. I'm looking towards Christina Burke, the Manager of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Agpata. I'll give a brief introduction to the application. Sorry, I seem to have lost. All good now? Okay. I'll give a brief introduction to the application here. Deputy Mayor Agpata, you've provided a nice overview already. But just in brief, again, the application for an official plan amendment is regarding the property 2362 Front Road and the adjacent parcel to the south. The application has come before us as the applicant wishes to potentially develop the property for a residential apartment building or condominium development. I'd like to note that at this meeting, we're only it's only regarding the official plan amendment. Any future applications or developments will be presented to council or dealt with administration and or the county at a later date. So for this meeting, we're looking as the applicant is requesting to remove the provincially significant wetland designation from the town's official plan for the subject property and to redesignate the lands residential. I'd like to note, as indicated in my report, that the applicant was first required to successfully pursue an official plan amendment with the County of Essex prior to making application with the town. The application went to the county to amend 2 schedules of their official plan, Schedule A1 to remove the natural environment designation and replacing it with the settlement area designation, and second, to remove the provincially significant wetland from the subject lands on Schedule B1. And on April 8th, 2024, the County of Essex did approve the requested amendments through their official plan amendment number 5, and that was under bylaw 2024-02. And a notice of the county's decision was provided as part of my report. And instead of me attempting to technically explain the environmental aspects of this application, I'd be happy to pass it on to the applicant's planner and their biologist, which they have prepared a presentation, and my understanding is they'll be presenting together. However, I'm happy to answer any questions council may have after the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Jackie Lassaline from Lassaline Planning Consultants. I'm here representing BD Sunset Marina. So we have a property that is vacant land south of the actual BD Marina. Next slide, please. And it's identified in red on the map. These lands are vacant and have no buildings presently on them. Next slide, please. During a county review of their official plan, we undertook an official plan amendment and had the PSW that's shown in blue on the property removed from the county mapping. Next slide, please. So the town of LaSalle official plan, Schedule B, shows the portion that still contains the PSW mapping. That must be removed in order for it to be in conformity with the county official plan and consistent with the PPS and the provincial wetland mapping. Next slide, please. So tonight, we're here to request an official plan amendment. The amendment is remove an on-land portion of incorrect and outdated PS mapping from the town of LaSalle Schedule B. It was incorrectly designated under the provincially significant wetlands, and we request that it be redesignated to residential. This was determined through the Ministry of Natural Resources mapping, IRCA mapping, and 2 ecologists that identified there was no PSW on the site. Simply, the requested official plan amendment will remove this label that was inaccurately imposed on the map. The requested official plan will not be authorizing the removal of provincially significant wetland, will only be amending the mapping. I now ask Barry Mylar.
So I'm ecologist number 2. A fellow by the name of Ron Hauser, senior to me and more experienced than me, visited the site in 2018. And, oh, sorry, next slide, please. He visited the site in 2018 and conducted the first assessment, which caused the Ministry of Natural Resources to revise their mapping, the provincial mapping, and pull the wetland off the subject, the vacant lands, the subject property, and off adjacent federally owned lands all the way up to the Detroit River, and you'll see that mapping later. This is what I encountered when I first visited the site late in 2022. That's the area that's identified as wetland. It's fill. It's been filled for decades. It's been used variously as a boat storage yard by the previous owners of the site, and was let go for a little bit by the previous owners of the site, as I'll show you in upcoming slides. And that led to the wetland redesignation. It's a bit of a story, but just so everyone understands what we're dealing with here, I'll tell it. So next slide, please. So this is what we were dealing with in 1947, before anyone built marinas down there. They were farm fields. And you can see, if you look out the west end of things towards the Detroit River, there was sort of a marshy edge, which would be expected. Next slide, please. By 1988, the pattern of marina development is, similar, almost identical to what we have today. You can see all there's been dredging and filling and creation of all these inlets and dock areas and whatnot. And our subject lands are that If you look at the little label that says 1988 Marina Lands, it's a little slip just south of that little label. You can see there's no buildings or anything on it, but it's just like a little inlet and open ground fill. Next slide, please. So by 2000, you can see on that parcel, there's a little bit of boat storage creeping in at the north end, and you can see some funny little lumpy pattern there south of the boats where someone was doing a little bit of grading and filling there, adding on top of the existing fill. You can see that the spits out on either side of that little inlet are getting pretty woolly, and no one was really managing the vegetation there in 2000. Next slide, please. By 2004, if you look sort of to the below and to the right of the boat storage that's on the vacant lands, you could see that there was still some sort of work going on there, but it had been let go, and the way that it had been accomplished was ponding a little bit of water, so that was a bit of a mess. And again, the spits on either side of the inlet there were unmanicured by the former owner. Next slide, please. So this is the 2006 air photo that M&R relied on in 2008 when they updated their provincially significant wetland mapping. The previous owner had pretty much stopped taking care of the vacant lands, and so there are areas that were where drainage had been interrupted, and there were just areas that were unmowed, and so it looks pretty heavily vegetated. A lot of it was that invasive Phragmites reed. And M&R, on the basis of air photo interpretation, extended their wetland mapping up onto that fill to encompass that, what they thought was a natural area. Next slide, please. You can see a little thin black line and some scribbly notes that aren't legible from here, but and this is straight out of the M&R wetland file, and I contacted M&R to get the history, where they circled the area to include in the mapping during that 2008 exercise. Now, M&R did that mapping, obviously didn't ground truth it. If they had gotten out and walked it, they would have seen that they're on, they're well elevated above the Detroit River on high and dry ground. The ground truthing is what happened once Ron got there in 2018 and once I arrived in 2022. Next slide, please. And so then this shows the current state of provincially significant wetland mapping. You can see the blue swath out of the Detroit River, both the former PSW mapping that was on the adjacent lands parcel and on the lands to the west of it, which are federally owned. All of that was removed by the Ministry of Natural Resources on their review of Ron Hauser's work. So hoping that there's general understanding that there was no wetland there. There was the impression of a wetland based on air photo interpretation. And the ground truthing, since accepted by the province, confirmed that there's no wetland.
So in conclusion, we'd just like to say that the requested official plan amendment today does conform with the official plan policies. We're not removing wetland. We're basically identifying that there was no wetland there. I'm available to answer any questions if council has any.
Looking to my colleagues for questions. Mr. Retto.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for our planner. I'm looking through the additional notes in the agenda, and I see a letter from a resident. It doesn't seem like she is speaking to the task at hand today about the wetland. She seems to be wanting to talk about things that are going to come possibly. Should we be concerned, or has her letter been brought into consideration for this meeting, or is there a necessity for that?
Thank you for your question through you, Deputy Mayor. We have, of course, we do consider all comments received. In the particular case for this application, it's been identified that some comments that were provided either did not make an impact. There were some concerns, again, about, the fact that the possibility that this is a wetland. Again, I'm not being the expert. They did have the biology work completed on the site that concludes that this is not a provincially significant wetland, and the works did already go through and granted approval at the county level for the official plan amendment there as well. With regard to future developments on the site and those types of concerns, you're correct. We're not considering those future developments at this time. That is just future development that has been proposed at this time is, again, that a proposal of they are pursuing the removal of the provincially significant wetland from our official plan due to the fact that they obviously want to do some kind of development in the future or plan to do something. So this is just the first step. There may be opportunities for the public to provide comments in the future if those types of Planning Act applications come through to fruition and are advertised to the public under the requirements of the Planning Act for public comments. And we'll be happy to address those at those times.
And it's fair to say that if and when that next step happens, this resident seems to be very close to the property, so she would automatically get a letter. That's fair to say.
The way the Planning Act is written today, for applications such as a zoning bylaw amendment that may occur here in the future, all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands should receive notification.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Carrick, I saw that you had a question for our.
I just want, just so I'm hearing this correctly, Natural Resources and IRCA, and also the official plan, are not designating this as provincially significant wetlands. Did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Looking to the rest of council for any other questions? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to what we've heard? Seeing none, we have before us the recommendation of the Planning and Development dated October 18th, 2024, PD 40-2024 regarding the official plan amendment OPA 01-2024 be received, and that council has a decision to make that the matter either be brought back to council via report with a final recommendation, or the official plan amendment and corresponding bylaw be brought back to council for consideration. Councillor Carrick.
I will support to be resolved the public planning meeting that be forwarded to council for consideration and subsequent council meeting amendment bylaw be brought forward. Support.
So that's moved by Councillor Carrick, support by Councillor Burns. Any further discussion on the motions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion as proposed? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none opposed, that motion carries. Item number 2, a public meeting to discuss a zoning bylaw amendment Z05-2024 for 6140 Morton Industrial Drive. Again, to Christina Bursick, the Manager of Planning and Development, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Akpata. So the application before us, as explained, is a zoning bylaw amendment. The property is 6140 Morton Industrial Drive. It's a 0.79 hectare parcel of land. It's just on the south side Morton Industrial. And the property is currently zoned BP, which is Business Park Zone. Now, the applicant is intending to repurpose the existing industrial building for a pickleball facility, for indoor pickleball facility, sorry, as well as a dedicated restaurant to service the pickleball patrons, and as well including a retail sale of pickleball equipment and apparel. The subject property currently has reciprocal access, reciprocal access agreement with the adjacent property at 6144 in order to share the driveway access to their respective sites. Now, this does not include any of the parking spaces, just access to the site. I just want to clarify that. So what the zoning amendment is looking to achieve here, or the applicant is looking to achieve through a zoning bylaw amendment, I should say, is site-specific zoning. So this will not be removing any existing zone or uses currently permitted on the site. So it won't remove any of the business park uses that are existing today. Instead, what it's going to do is add an additional use. So what it'll add is the recreational facility. And they're also looking to include a restaurant in conjunction with an operational recreational facility, include an adjustment in the parking permissions for the restaurant portion of the site. They're looking to reduce that to 1 space per 25 meters squared. And the reasoning behind that was kind of similar to pickleball court is quite large. Otherwise, the other ratio for parking would require a lot more parking spaces for that restaurant based on the size of the area and the use. And it's a little bit more in keeping with a restaurant in conjunction with a golf course. So that's the same parking ratio that they're looking to achieve here. And the last but not least is adding retail in conjunction with an operational recreational facility. Now, I'd like to also add, and I've included this in my report as well, is the zoning bylaw will be written in such a way that doesn't permit a restaurant or a retail component to operate on its own if the pickleball facility was to cease operation. They will be tied to that pickleball facility. I also wanted to add that included with the application was a letter from the neighboring parcel, which I described, that has reciprocal access with the subject property. Malash Windows and Doors did provide a written statement saying that they had no opposition to the proposed zoning amendment, and they had no issue with obviously continuing to share the access agreement, which of course they have a registered easement over. I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have. However, just like the application prior, the applicant's planner did prepare a presentation to give you a little bit more further detail whenever council wishes to view that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. I'd ask Amy Farkas, a planner from Dillon Consulting, to come forward, please. We'll be presenting in person and available to answer questions on what Ms. Bursick has just described.
I think I'm still, oh, there we go. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me here this evening. I'm Amy Farkas from Dillon Consulting and the planner on this file. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So just to reiterate a few of the points that Christina had brought up. The location is 6140 Morton Industrial Drive, and it has about 46 meters of frontage on Morton. That's really the only access point there. And as noted, there is reciprocal access across the site with 6144. Next slide, please. So the applicant is proposing to redevelop the existing building for 8 interior pickleball courts with about a 1,600 square foot restaurant as an ancillary use to the pickleball facility, as well as a 2,500 square foot retail space for the pickleball equipment and apparel. Next slide, please. So as shown on the conceptual development plan, there will be no additions or exterior modifications to the site other than just, some paint and just beautifying the building and adding the striping for the parking area. And so based on the layout that's there, we have about 61 parking spaces for the facility. Next slide, please. And so in order to facilitate the proposed development, a zoning bylaw amendment is required to add the pickleball use and the restaurant in conjunction with recreational facility as permitted uses in the business park zone. And on the next slide, we just have a definition up there of what a recreational facility is. Next slide, please. So as noted earlier, there are 61 parking spaces on the site. And it's important to note that a lot of these activities are going to be outside of the regular business hours. So tournaments if there are going to be tournaments, they will be held on the weekends. So there's going to be that off-peak parking. So there really isn't much of a concern of the parking overflow into the adjacent site. And it shouldn't interfere with the operations of the existing Meloche windows. Next slide, please. And so determine the feasibility of the proposed development. We do a comprehensive evaluation of, the provincial planning statement, the County of Essex official plan, as well as the Town of LaSalle OP and zoning bylaw. And based on the provincial policy statement, it really does promote opportunities to facilitate economic growth and efficient development patterns. It's taking precedence over utilizing existing infrastructure and facilities, looking for economic development and competitiveness. So that's something that's promoted through the PPS. And also looking for transitional uses with employment areas and non-employment areas. So there is the residential development that's on the other side. So, this really is a nice transitional use with some of the lighter industrial uses on Morton Industrial. Next slide, please. In terms of the County of Essex official plan, it is within the primary settlement area, and these policies really encourage intensification and the promotion of healthy, diverse, and vibrant areas, and also activities for residents, which this is going to be a nice amenity for the community. Next slide, please. The subject site is designated Business Park District in the Town of LaSalle official plan. So this development is in keeping with the policies. The business park designation does encourage and permit recreational uses, health clubs, so this falls within those land use permissions. It also encourages the development of complete, viable, and healthy communities with access to recreational facilities. So this proposed use conforms with the OP policies of the town. Next slide, please. And so the site is zoned Business Park District. So we are here tonight just to add the additional uses to the Business Park zone. Next slide, please. So we feel that the proposed infill redevelopment is appropriate for this location by encouraging a less intensive and more compatible use for the subject site and the surrounding area, which includes light industrial and then residential to the south. So pickleball is a popular, all ages sport, and I'm sure everybody, maybe many people in the room have participated at some point in time. And we feel that this will be an additional and welcome amenity to the town. There will be no impacts to the surrounding uses, and peak times will, as noted, will offset those of the surrounding businesses. Next slide, please. The proposal represents good planning as it promotes and encourages a healthy, livable community, contributing to the guiding principles of the PPS, the county OP, and the LaSalle official plan. And that's it for me. I'm available for questions, as is the applicant is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking to my council colleagues for any questions through our planner, or through our planning department? Seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Mr. Burns? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Burns. Go ahead, sir.
The, I guess I would call it an easement or the joint agreement between the driveways with Meloche Windows, and I think this was Pro Power or Pro something before. Is that registered on title?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes, it is registered on title.
Okay, thank you. To our planner, it certainly would have been nice in the package to have the letter from Meloche Window agreeing with it. Just a note for the future. Thank you very much. That's the only questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Again, looking to my council colleagues, are there any other questions? Seeing none, looking to the audience, is there anybody who would like to speak to the matter that's been dealt with? Seeing none. The recommendation before us is the report of the Manager of Planning and Development dated October 18th, 2024, PD 40-2024, regarding the official plan amendment OPA 01-2024 be received, and that council has a decision to make. That, one, the matter be brought back to council via report with a final recommendation, or the official plan amendment and corresponding bylaw be brought back to council for consideration. Mr. Reno.
Thank you. I would like to propose that we move with the second option, as I did not see anybody come to speak against this. So should all issues be resolved at the public planning meeting, the requisite by law will be brought forward to council's consideration at a subsequent council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Reno. I believe you're seconding. So, Councillor Richo Spagnolo, looking to our admin.
Sorry, just for council's benefit, we do have the bylaw on tonight's agenda, so that subsequent council meeting will actually be this evening if council decides to move in favor of the or portion of the recommendation.
Thank you very much. There is a motion before council to decide. Moved by Councillor Reno, seconded by Councillor Richo Spagnolo. Any other comments from admin before I go to Councillor Carrick? Seeing none, Councillor Carrick?
I tried to get in earlier than one question, just my comments. And I think all of us are on the same page here. This is awesome. Hopefully this comes to fruition and we get it through, because it seems like it's year-round and it takes a lot of pressure off us. And to be honest, that pressure on the taxpayers that have to build more courts, and that's great, and I hope it works out for you. We're behind you 100%.
Councillor Spagnolo.
Just a question. When would the construction start, and when would be the target date to open?
Councillor Reno, you had a question.
No, just more of a comment to the proponent. I wanted to thank you for investing in LaSalle. I've been following your file for a while now, and I've had a chance to come in and ask questions, and I'm sorry that this is such a long process, as you know, was brought up a few times, but we just have to make sure that we get it right with all the neighbors and with all the people. I can personally tell you I probably live 500 feet from you. And I've been watching the painting that's been going on and the beautification, and I really think you have something great to offer. And in today's age, where you know we're in the middle of a parks master plan, and people will be wanting more, and they'll be coming to us to build facilities like what you are. Much like Councillor Carrick said, it's well appreciated that when someone else steps up, and we can then focus on other things. So I think this is a great addition, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Looking to my colleagues for any further comments before the vote. There is a motion on the floor that's been moved by Councillor Reno, seconded by Councillor Richo Spagnolo, that the official plan amendment and corresponding bylaw be brought back to council for consideration. We're going to vote. All in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one opposed, that motion is carried. Move on to item 3. Any public comments on what we've done so far today? Seeing none. we're gonna go to actions by council. The actions by council are clear today. As indicated by Ms. Bursick, we do have a bylaw that we'll be dealing with later this evening. Seeing that we've come to the end of the agenda, I'm looking for an adjournment. Councillor Carrick, Councillor Burns, thank you very much.